In this video, you will learn how to make the pattern for capri pants. Capris, crop pants, or clam diggers are 3/4 length pants that end between the calf and ankle. The measurements used here are for a 4-year-old child. You can adapt these measurements as per your required fit. To make the pattern, you will need your pattern sheet, markers in 3 different colors, a ruler, and a pair of scissors. Start by laying the pattern sheet flat on the table. Remember that patterns are often cut on fold for symmetry. We shall start by folding the sheet of paper once along its length so it forms a rectangle with 2 longer sides. If you want to adapt the garment to your own size, you will need the following measurements. If you like, you can fold a pair of ready-made pants and place them on the pattern sheet for reference. Make sure there's an extra 0.5 inches along the width of the garment for a seam allowance. For example, when folded in half, these capris measure a width of 8.5 inches at the crotch point. Consequently, the width of the folded sheet will have to be at least 9 inches. The length of the capris is 18.5 inches. Remember to include a hem allowance of 2 inches at the leg hole. We therefore need a length of 20.5 inches down from the waistline. Stretch out the elastic and measure the waist of the capris. Here, the waist measures 13 inches. Once you have noted down all the measurements, you can start drawing your pattern. Create a rectangle on the pattern sheet as shown to mark the base measurements of the capris. Mark point B 1.5 inches along the fold from A, which is at the top corner. Now mark points C and D 18.5 and 20.5 inches respectively from point B. Shift the ruler to the opposite edge of the sheet and mark points E, F, G, and H perpendicular to A, B, C, and D respectively. Now along the width of the sheet, draw the lines HD, GC, and FB. You may now mark the 2 points that define the waistline as shown. The lines AI and BJ will measure 6.5 inches. Note that these lines make up half of the 13-inch waist measured earlier. You can now mark the crotch point at K, followed by the width of the leg hole at points L and M. These 3 points join to define the inseam of the capris. One way to find the crotch point is to place a well-fitting pair of ready-made pants on the pattern as shown and to mark the crotch point on the line FG. Alternately, measure the crotch depth from waistline to seat and find this point along the line FG. To learn more about measurements, watch the video on taking measurements. Now at the hem of the pants, measure the width of the leg hole. Here it measures 5 inches. Mark point L 5.5 inches from C. This includes 0.5 inches of seam allowance. Draw an arc from I to K that passes through J. Now draw a second arc from K to M, passing through L. These arcs represent the crotch seam and inseam lines, inclusive of the seam allowance. Shade the allowances for the hem and for the casing at the waist. Use a different color for the hem to not get muddled up. We shall now mark the seam allowance. Using a third color, mark a series of points within the pattern that are 0.5 inches from the arcs of the inseam and crotch seam. Connect these points with a dotted line. Shade the intermediate area between the two sets of arcs to demarcate the seam allowance. You can now start cutting the pattern along its outline. Remove the extra bits of pattern sheet. If you like, open out the folded pattern and verify the dimensions and shape. You have now learned to make the pattern for a pair of capris. Watch the remaining videos in this series and finish your garment.